We'll argue the other one in open court. State of New Mexico versus Alec Baldwin, and we have Thank you. We have,
Permission to begin without my client.
We can't begin without the defendant, please.
all right.
I don't think it's not appropriate.
Alex.
Your Honor, do you have a preference? Do you want the
Well, I would say, given the documents, I agree with you. Given the documents.
Yeah.
Given the documents, I agree he should be here. I know you can waive, but this is part of the trial, and he should be here for this document in particular. Yes?
Understood. Do you have a preference about the order, the manner in which we make these arguments? Do you want the defense to go first about why they want them redacted, or do you want me to go first about why I want them in?
Well, they are going to be your exhibits, so you should go first.
Okay. Can I? Sure. Which one do you want to start with? You want to start with the 21st?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. This dialogue here that takes place between pages 2 and 5. You have heard the defense attorneys on appropriate questioning of the witnesses, and also during opening statements talk about how upset Mr. Baldwin was, that he was upset, that he was panicked, that he was ashen. He was even ashen in color. What pages 2 through 5 demonstrate, and I want to tell you, let me make one correction.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
The highlighted is the portion that you want redacted.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay, well, I only see, oh, got the wrong one in front of me. Okay, all right, sorry, I transposed them. Okay, go ahead.
And let me find this part. Hang on just a second.
Thank you.
Okay, so if I to help make my point, if we go down to the last paragraph of page 4, you'll see where Mr. Baldwin is speaking to someone on the phone, and he says, and just spend the time here, and they're going to do what they've got to deal with. He's talking about, I think, investigators and also insurance investigators, and deal with what they've got to deal with. And we shouldn't let "we'll go have, it'll work, and we'll go," and I believe what he says, and I can play it if you need me to, because you can actually hear it on the audio, even though the transcript says indiscernible. "We'll go have a good time." So these are not, at this point in time when Mr. Baldwin is making this statement, he's at the police station. He does not know that Ms. Hutchins has passed, but he knows that she's been critically injured, and she's so injured that she's been taken away in a helicopter. And if the defense hasn't spent all of this time saying how panicked and upset he was, I'm not sure that it would be relevant, but he is actually planning basically a vacation, and he tells his family, "Still come to New Mexico, we'll have a good time." So this is obviously information that directly contradicts what the defense has argued, and if it would help the court to see his demeanor and hear what he actually says, his family was coming to New Mexico the following day because he had a bit part for his daughter in the movie. So his wife and all of his children were coming the following day, and he is telling his, at one point, I think he's speaking to his wife, and he has her on FaceTime so we can actually hear her. We can hear her responses. And then he's speaking to another person who sounds like some sort of a family assistant or a nanny or someone like that. And he is explaining that he wants that person to try to convince his wife to still come to New Mexico because they can't get their money back for the plane tickets, and they'd like to go ahead and have a good time.
Where's the thing about the plane tickets? I didn't read that.
So here's where he says it. There's a part here where he says they're not going to give us our money back.
Oh yeah, that's okay.
That's what he's referring to.
Okay.
So
are you talking about lines 19 through 25 on page 4? You object to the redaction on just this portion?
On what page? I'm sorry.
Well, you said 2 to 5, and then you pointed out a particular portion within 2 to 5.
Overall, my position is this is the defendant's statement, and it comes in, and I don't see a reason that it stays out. And the reason specifically that a lot of this conversation comes in is because of the defense statements about his state of mind, and this directly contradicts those.
All right, you're going to come back up here.
Yes, sir.
No?
Do you want me to step?
Yeah, I want you to go over there.
Can I leave these here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm just going to set this aside.
So, Your Honor, first, what we have within this section that we're going to be discussing right now is we have also some additional hearsay. So we're looking at not only Mr. Baldwin's statements, but it also includes statements from the female speaker who would be his wife. And then we see female speaker 1, there's also female speaker 2. So there's additional hearsay aside from, again, the statements that we're talking about with respect to Mr. Baldwin. In addition, when we're looking at whether or not this is admissible, the court has to engage in a balancing test as to what the probative value actually is. The court has already indicated and ruled, in fact, at the motions in limine, that Mr. Baldwin's demeanor, even leading up to the accident, was not going to be coming in because the court engaged in that balancing test and said, for example, anything regarding him exhibiting poor behavior.
Way broad brushing, my rule.
Understood, Your Honor. And so I have actually the court's ruling here, so I'll be more specific. So what it says is that any of the videos or any evidence or pictures which relate to Mr. Baldwin not handling or that goes to the defendant's gun that worked or didn't work, and they're showing that it did work because he's shooting. There's videos showing that he's cocking the gun, and it says that those would come in. However, everything else regarding him yelling at the crew or telling people to hurry up, none of that is relevant, and that is propensity evidence.
Right, and that dealt with what was offered, okay?
That is correct.
Was not offered. This was not even discussed at that time. So this is
Correct.
fresh to the court.
Absolutely, Your Honor. So what we're doing is we're looking at what the court had previously ruled, and then we're using that also to inform the arguments that we're making at this time. And so certainly when we're talking about state of mind for after the fact, that becomes even less relevant than state of mind or actions that were happening leading up to the accident. So when we're looking at what this is actually probative of, the state is saying it's probative of that he's, talking about he's going to go have a good time. He's really not that distraught about it. But if we look again at what is Mr. Baldwin's state of mind after this has happened, what element does that go to within the proof that the state has to demonstrate in order to meet the elements to demonstrate that he is actually guilty of involuntary manslaughter? And the answer is that none of this here is probative of any effect of consequence to any of the elements of the crime that he is charged with. So when the court is engaging in this balancing test, we have to look to see what is the probative value, and there's none or very minimal, but the danger of unfair prejudice is substantial, and it substantially outweighs any probative value in that, again, he's talking about his family, he's talking about plans that they have, and there's danger that the jury will misinterpret that or misuse that to view him as being callous or that he doesn't care about Ms. Hutchins, when actually that's not accurate. So we are asking that the court exclude this section that we're referring to. In addition, Your Honor, let me go over to page 5. If the court will look at the top of page 5, here again, this is just more, them trying to make him look callous. He's worried about, at the top, he's talking about staying away from people.
Look over your shoulder.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. Oh, do you want? Okay.
I just want it because mine's under yours, so
Understood.
I can't see where you are. Okay.
So, Your Honor, so what we're talking about here up at the top of the page is, again, he's worried about being photographed. He does live a very public life, and this is a very, difficult, sensitive time just in general for everyone. And the references to the media here, again, could be taken as something callous or something of that sort. And so, he's talking about, this is breaking news, this is media, and he's trying to keep his family away from that as well. So it's misleading, and when we engage in a 403 balancing test, this should not come in.
Normally, I would agree, but for the fact that the defense actually made his demeanor after the fact relevant. So now that they've made it relevant, it's relevant, and it goes both ways.
All right, thank you. The court makes the following ruling. Under 11-401, it says it has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence and the factors of consequence in determining the action. It is not only the issue of whether he committed the crime of involuntary manslaughter, it's also a relevant fact. And you all made that fact very important through Officer LaFleur yesterday. So I do find that it's relevant to basically respond to you all talking about how upset Mr. Baldwin was, and certainly that you consider that fact of consequence, and I'm deciding that this rebuttal information is of consequence. I also find that its probative value is not substantially outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice and all the other choices that are under 11-403. I will say that I think that I'm not going to let everything in. I'm going to focus on page 4, and I'll start with line 16 and on page 4, and I will go to page 5.
And I'm sorry, is this what's coming in or what's staying out?
No, it's coming in. The rest of the yellow is staying out.
Can you repeat that line
Just a
again?
minute, I'm reading
Okay,
page 5.
sorry.
Okay, so it's line 16, starting with Alec Baldwin, finishes the rest of the page 4, starts on page 5 at the top, and finishes on line 10. The rest of the yellow will be redacted.
Understood. are we ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
The next one I show, and Ms. LeBlanc, just correct me if I'm wrong, is on page 12.
That's correct.
So this issue goes directly to Mr. Baldwin's state of mind, and I'm looking, Your Honor, I'm sorry, at basically 12 through 14. He understands that whether there's a live round on set or not, these guns can be dangerous, and he says it right here between 12 and 14. What he's talking about with the wadding can come out. If you're closer, you can get a burn. That's him talking about his knowledge of the danger of these guns. That goes directly to the heart of the state's case. As the court knows, the state doesn't disagree with 15 through 17. And again, when we start here on 18, where Mr. Baldwin says, "I'm told," that again goes directly to his knowledge of the injuries that can occur if these guns are not handled with safety. He says right there, "I'm told even with the flash powder, you can cause contusions and you can do a brain bleed and die." And you know what? We can take out this part here that says which both of them died, because that is relevant to the Brandon Lee, John Eric Hexum that we agreed to remove. So I don't oppose taking out both of them died, but this goes directly to the heart of the state's case. And then I think it's 21 through 25 we've agreed to redact. Obviously, this part here on the top of page 13 is very important to the state because Mr. Baldwin says, "My point is I've been doing this. I shot enough guns in my day in movies. I've never seen this before where a flash round was." Obviously, what I'm trying to get in is he's got experience with firearms, and he talks to Detective Hancock pretty extensively about that. So his personal experience with firearms on movie sets and off movie sets is all absolutely relevant. You want me to stop there?
Yeah.
Here, let's do this. Let me just...
There you go.
So, Your Honor, this was already the subject of a defense motion in limine that the court ruled upon. So we have, in the transcript of the pretrial proceedings, the parties were arguing about whether or not this knowledge of danger of blanks would be admissible. And so what the court ruled was, the court said, the court makes the following ruling, weighing whether it has any tendency to make a fact more probable or less probable than it would be without it, and whether its probative value substantially is outweighed by the unfair prejudice. I think it's difficult to deal with what I read in the grand jury transcripts about, the theory about the negligent use of a deadly weapon is that this manner of handling, that he shouldn't have cocked the gun, etc. And then with respect to the alternative is that he failed to check the gun. He failed to confirm that the gun, and I remember the word confirm, about live ammunition before he pointed it at someone. The court went on. I think that I will not allow any testimony other than one sentence, probably by your expert, Ms. Morrissey, that says the blanks also can kill. But to consider that he failed somehow, that's just going to be up to the trier of fact. I think everybody knows that guns can kill. It depends on what's in there. But I think that you cannot mention it, you can mention it, but that's it. We're not going through 5 different questions on tell me how serious this is, and if he's a gun owner and he's done all these westerns or not westerns, but all this gun experience, then he should have known. Just say that, and if you can tie that up, great. So that's specifically on this subject, and so we've already argued this, and the court has already ruled. So based on that, we are asking that the court, consistent with its previous ruling, exclude these portions. And the additional portions, there will be a number of other sections in the transcript that I think we can dispense with rather quickly once we have the court's ruling on that as well.
Is that the part about when he talks about the commingling? Is one of them about the commingling and the dummy rounds?
I don't recall, Your Honor. I have some flagged, but I think we can move through them fairly quickly, and I can identify those to the court every place that is throughout the transcript. But,
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
If I may. So my concern is that I didn't realize necessarily during the motion hearing, I thought we were talking about witness testimony, not the defendant's own statements. And let me try to articulate for the court where I think some difficulty may come in. If I have my expert do what the court suggested and just have him give the one sentence that blanks can kill, then what we're missing, the important part is that Mr. Baldwin knows that. So these statements that he made to Detective Hancock go directly to that one sentence that you're allowing us to get in, because Mr. Baldwin actually knows that, and the elements of the offense go directly to what he knew or should have known. That's in the actual jury instruction. So this is something that he knew or should have known. There are rules that say don't point the gun at anyone, and this is obviously one of the reasons, is because even if you have largely inert ammunition, it can still hurt someone, or Mr. Baldwin even indicated he knew that it could kill someone. So I think that this needs to be in for that reason.
Which motion was it?
Your Honor, it was all approach the podium. Your Honor, I believe this was number 3. This would be defense 3, is that correct? Defendant's motion eliminate 3, I believe it was. And we have the transcript if the court would like to review it. Based on what the state has just argued in their reply, may I just be heard as to the new arguments?
Is this your motion?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
The new argument?
Yes, the
That's
state.
her reply,
the
isn't it? Didn't she go first?
She did. She
And
did.
You're doing a surreply.
And if I may have just a few sentences, Your Honor, because I think this is important, as what she stated is new, since she's now talking about disagreeing with the ruling that we had. But we relied on the court's ruling. In our jury selection, we did not cover this topic. In our opening, we did not cover this topic.
It's not 3. Where is it?
I believe it's number 3. It's the foreseeability.
7, Your Honor.
Oh, 7. I apologize, Your Honor. Number 7.
You mean defendant 7?
Defendant's 7. Yes, Your Honor. It was our motion to exclude.
I don't have these numbered.
Would the court like me to present the transcript?
No.
At the court's convenience? Okay.
Was it? What is the name of the motion?
The name of the motion.
It's a motion to exclude evidence related to the spelling bee, Your Honor.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
The additional blanks came up in the opposition
Okay.
in detail.
Got it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. To allow the state to basically relitigate this, I think would put us in very dangerous territory because the defense relied on the court's ruling, and the court was very clear about what would be permitted and what would not be. And I think to say that the state thought that that somehow didn't apply to statements they wanted to introduce by Mr. Baldwin is disingenuous. And so we relied on this again in our jury.
I will see the transcript.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to approach the court.
You know, this was related to, and I think I say it here where I talk about on page 154, which you left out. But this is to Mr. Nikas, where he's saying that the state, Miss Hutchinson, would have died if there were a blank in the gun. That they were asserting that they were going beyond live ammunition, and they were talking about that they expected witnesses to testify, in particular Mr. Carpenter, that blanks can kill as well, and that he should have known that. That's different from his own admissions of his knowledge, and I'm going to let the following in. I'm going to let page 12. I'm going to let line 13, right in the middle. Sometimes the wadding can come out. If you're closer, you can get a burn. It shows that he does have knowledge of guns.
Hang on, Your Honor, I just want to use, I see, I'm sorry.
And then on lines 18, 19, and I'm told even with the flash powder you can cause contusions and you can do a brain bleed. And then also lines 1 through 5 on page 13.
And Your Honor, I do understand the court's ruling. If I may, just for the court, just to remind me, because I know we're dealing with the transcripts and we had these arguments earlier. So if I may, just to kind of perhaps refresh the court a little bit, part of what the arguments were about as well was the fact that the way that the grand jury presentation had gone, and in that had not been focused on blanks. It was about live ammunition, live rounds, and that was the basis of what the knowledge must be in order for it to meet the elements of the charge.
This is what in the grand jury, Mr. Carpenter was talking about all these duties that Mr. Baldwin should have had, including the knowledge that blanks can kill. He said that he should have had that knowledge. Everybody has that knowledge when they talk about don't pointing the gun and things like that. And I did not want to belabor the point that blanks can kill, okay? But that's different from Mr. Baldwin's own assertions of the knowledge that he had with respect to guns. All right. Next.
Your Honor, same argument from the state with regard to the bottom of page 14, the last two words that start with and, I'm. And then if we, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. And then if we move to the top of 15, this is the exact same information, exact same argument. It's Mr. Baldwin solidifying and reiterating what he knew or should have known that goes directly to the elements of the offense. Nothing further.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I was actually retrieving my items. What page were we on?
If we go right down to the bottom of 14, and we just start with those two words, and then we just roll over to the first 4 lines of 15.
And so, you know, the issue that we're going to have, again, with this, Your Honor, is that, you know, we did not ask witnesses questions regarding this type of harm and what was learned, and certainly those kinds of things might have been able to come through Ms. Popple. And so, you know, and again, we did not do jury selection on this, which we absolutely would have. We didn't open on this because of the ruling and the way that we understood it based on our review of the transcript. So I do have concerns that this is going to prejudice the defense, and we would ask that the court consider not allowing
Attention
this.
to my ruling, because my ruling was with respect to witnesses, because I particularly told Ms. Morrissey that her witness got to ask her witness one sentence. That is because Mr. Carpenter was really opinionated about that blanks can kill in the grand jury, and I did not want to move away from the fact that they weren't blanks, it was live ammunition. But this goes to Mr. Baldwin's state of mind, completely different, and I'm going to let this in as well. Page 15, 1 through 4, lines 1 through 4.
Do you know where the next jump is?
Yeah. It's just to page 62. Do you want me to move over?
Huh?
Do you want me to move back?
No, you're fine. Stay right there. We'll just save some time. Okay, Your Honor, we're jumping to the bottom of page 62. You know what? I'm gonna change my position. Why don't we go ahead and just exclude the bottom of 62 and the top of 63?
Yes, I agree.
What's the next one, Heather, since you've got the tab?
The next one we have is 69.
So, I think that as witness testimony, and it's difficult when we're doing motions in limine because the court certainly doesn't know what all the witness testimony is going to be. So part of the issue here is we were intending to ask the court to, not necessarily today with these witnesses, to potentially reconsider this ruling. I don't think it makes a big difference in this particular interview, but we absolutely have witnesses who will testify if the court were to permit them. The safety bulletins speak directly to producers and their responsibility for set safety. I can show it to you. In addition to that, the witnesses who were on scene with Mr. Baldwin would discuss the fact that his role as producer is what enabled him to be in a position to disregard the safety rules. But with regard to this particular line, I'm not married to it. I can try to revisit this issue with the court when we have relevant witnesses on the witness stand.
Your Honor, the court had the ability to reserve.
So all I'm looking at is this line, okay?
Correct.
Both of you. And I'm going to not let it in.
Okay.
Okay, next.
What's the next page?
Next is, this one's out by stipulation. Let me see. Next is page 81. A portion of that is out by stipulation, but I believe the next is page 81.
Yes.
The top portion of that is out by stipulation, I believe, but then the lower part of page 81 is still subject to disagreement.
Let me just refresh my memory on what it is. So, some of this contains his, wait a minute, let me. I guess the top top part of it, it is directly related to what he's talking about at the beginning, which the court admitted. So my concern is I don't think that if we take out, and on Saturday my daughter was going to be in the movie, we had a little part for her, and this top, so I want to point out that here at the bottom of page 81, Mr. Baldwin says, well, let me ask you this. Originally, this is very complicated. I mean, none of this compared to what happened to them, but my wife and my whole family was here. They weren't, but his daughter was going to be in the movie. So, again, this goes to the opening arguments, the continuing defense that we are going to hear throughout the course of this trial. Mr. Baldwin, at this point in time, knows that someone's in the hospital and another person has been taken away on a helicopter, is critically injured, and what he is concerned about during the interview is what's happening to his family and whether or not his family is going to come and visit him. So he's actually taking a moment in the interview with the detective to talk about, this is complicated because my family is supposed to come.
All right, thank you.
So, Your Honor, the court has already ruled admissible the previous portion of this. And again, I think when the court is looking at balancing, the court can also determine how much of this to permit in. It is cumulative of what the state already has used the earlier statements to reference, which would be his supposed state of mind after the fact. I don't know how much we need to then, continue to allow in all of the rest of this over and over. And certainly, again, him wanting to have his family there with him is not shocking after something like this. It is certainly a very difficult time. But again, as the court is looking at the balancing, one of those things that the court will balance is the cumulative nature of what is being offered. The court has already ruled admissible the previous statements, and we would ask that the court not allow additional statements related to that at this time based on the limited probative value of the testimony or evidence.
All right, I don't think this is of much consequence. I think that the part I ruled on earlier went to rebut the information about his coloring and everything else like that. Granted, there was a lapse in time, so that can be addressed in questioning. But the fact that his daughter was going to be in the movie and he's mentioning that, I don't think that, and she was so excited to come, I don't think that's helpful. He's just describing really his kids. That's not coming in.
Understood. Is the next one that on page 83? Is that what you have?
Yes. And the first, I think, 5 lines are out by stipulation, and then we're just dealing with then 6.
Right. So 6 through 14. Certainly, the top part is an explanation of his comments at the beginning that the court has ruled are admissible. I certainly can forfeit. I told the producers I would stay tomorrow in case anybody else, their insurance investigators, their lawyers want to talk to me. I don't have too much heartburn over letting that go, but I do think that the fact that there are 2 people who've been taken away to the hospital, and Mr. Baldwin is upset because his wife wants to cancel her trip, again goes directly to the defense of this man was devastated.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So, Your Honor, first the state, this was already part of the stipulation, was through page 83, line 5. So I won't argue that since the state had already stipulated to that earlier. With respect to lines 6 through 14, much of what is being relayed here is actually his wife's statements, about what she thought about, the weird energy or whether or not she wanted to come down. And so I think, again, the state has already is already going to be permitted to introduce those other statements related to his state of mind. This has very minimal probative value, particularly considering the court's ruling a moment ago, and we would ask that the court exclude this, particularly, again, considering the fact that a lot of this is about his wife and her thoughts as well, and it's not sufficiently probative.
Yeah, I don't think it's very relevant. I think, and the relevancy goes to the rebuttal of how he was feeling. I think that the pages 4 and 5 directly relate to that, but I don't think this does, so I'm not going to redact it. Last page.
There is further down on the same page. I believe it starts at line 22 of page 83 and then continues on into page 84, line 8.
So, Mr. Baldwin has critically injured someone, and what he's saying to the detective, and keep in mind, Your Honor, Mr. Baldwin was going to stay and complete originally he was going to be in New Mexico to complete the filming until I think close to the end of October. And he is already making plans to return home to New York, even though he's critically injured 2 people. It is the exact opposite of what the defense is going to argue, which is this was devastating to him. This devastating. I think there's even phrases in this interview where he says, "I'm devastated," or maybe it's in November 3rd. So this is completely contradictory to other statements that he makes where he says, "I'm devastated." 2 people are in the hospital and he doesn't even want to stay and make sure they're okay.
Your Honor, he offered to stay, and that's throughout this transcript. It even says it further down on this same page. He says, "Unless you tell me not to, or if you tell me to come back in, I'll do whatever it is that you want." He's making himself completely available, but not shockingly, his wife wants him home. He is a father.
I don't find it relevant, the rebuttal. It's going to be redacted. All right, next.
The next one is out by stipulation, which is on page 85.
I think that's it. Could it be?
That
Yes,
may be it on this one. I will note,
You
Your Honor.
stipulated to, okay, what?
Yes. There were other portions within here that we had found that were related to the blank situation. I understand the court's ruling. If the court is willing to consider as part of its gatekeeping function limiting the amount of that.
Too late.
Just the amount.
Too
I
late.
understand.
That's what happens when you do
understand,
2 days before. Okay, let's go.
Just in terms of, I know that we've got one more statement to try to tackle. So now that the court has ruled on the redactions, because these are the defense requests, I'm expecting the defense to do the redactions and provide them to me quickly, because this is Hancock, and Hancock's going to take the witness stand as soon as possible.
That is our intention.
Well, you're finished, so you're going to do the,
No, I have
oh, that's right, okay, I
5
apologize.
or so 10 minutes max.
Okay, and then you're going to do the redirect. So while they're doing that, go ahead and provide a copy with the redactions that I've ruled should
Yes,
be
ma'am.
redacted, which were minimal. Okay,
Yes, Judge.
what's next?
There is the second statement. Is this
So
yours? Is this your copy?
the second statement, this is a statement that takes place on
I hope you
November-
got that. Do you need any clarification? Because I don't want this going south when Hancock's on the stand. Do you want me to
Yes.
repeat it?
I think we have it from
Okay.
the transcript, Ron.
Hmm?
I think we have it from the transcript.
No. My rulings. So,
Yes, just because
okay.
we have the real time.
All right,
on it,
okay,
so
good.
we'll
Okay,
see.
what's next? I said the jury comes back at 2. They have 1 minute before I call back
Yes.
the jury.
Yes,
Otherwise,
Your
you're going to abandon these.
Yes, Your Honor. We'll be quick.
So if we look at this part at the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2,
This is what I'm going to do because we're running out of time. I'm going to make a ruling. These were given to, your intended redactions were given 2 days before. And so far, the only thing I've heard that was a surprise was the testimony of his knowledge of guns, so, let's see, well, I mean, everybody got a point somewhere. I don't find that, I'm gonna redact that. I don't find that's relevant. It's just in passing, really, and he's talking about other people.
Well, if I can,
Sure.
Your Honor, I just
Yeah.
want to talk about it in a little bit more context. So what's happening here is Detective Hancock and Mr. Baldwin are talking about Ms. Gutierrez and her lawyers. Ms. Gutierrez is obviously her conduct is being discussed extensively. Mr. Baldwin says, but it's her lawyer saying that on her behalf. So if we're going to redact the bottom portion, then honestly, I think that we need to redact the part where he says it's her lawyer saying that on her behalf. I mean, I think if we redact the part about the lawyers, we redact everything.
That's fine. It does take it out of like nowhere context. Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm thinking, and then if you really want to argue it. All right, page 15. I don't find this relevant.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let me catch up to you.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is relevant because what Mr. Baldwin is talking about right here to Hancock is his intention to sit for a public interview, and that public interview turns out to be with George Stephanopoulos. It was that interview that led to the accidental discharge testing and all kinds of stuff. Again, Judge, it's the defendant's own statement. He knew he had a right to counsel.
All right, I'll let 1 through 6 in, but this thing about the Kennedy Center is not coming in. 1 through 6 on page 15.
1 through 6 comes in, the rest of it's out. Understood.
Page 18. Tell me why this is relevant or not relevant or relevant. Ms. Morrissey.
Okay, let me just. Sure. So the top part is him saying to Detective Hancock, "You don't know anything about my business. You don't know anything about my business. You're in law enforcement. You're the person who, when they do something wrong, you're the last person they want to see. You live a very, very difficult but ultimately very narrow life." I believe. Hang on. Let me finish it a little bit. Well, it all goes. I think we've got like three or four pages, so I think it all kind of goes together. Hang on just a second. Okay, so this part, I mean, the part at the bottom of 18, it puts in context the part at the top of 19, and this goes directly to Mr. Baldwin's motivation to lie about pulling the trigger of the gun. I'm 63 years old with 6 kids. I can't rely on luck anymore. He's talking about his career and that he can't rely on luck anymore. This goes exactly to his motivation not to tell the truth. Sorry.
Can we approach briefly?
Sure. I don't think this information is that helpful one way or the other, but I'm going to let it in because of the lateness of your redactions. So, because it's 2 o'clock now, and so we're going to go. All right?
I understand. May I just briefly be heard on that point?
No. All right. Get your redactions in earlier.
Understood, Your Honor.
And that includes 20
Everything,
minutes.
everything I quit on is coming in. Do you understand? That page forward
Yes,
So everything subsequent to.
and that page.
okay.
No, I know. He hasn't passed. We're asking two different questions.
And this goes on the record.
I gotcha. Did you ask for us to come up?
Yes.
I just, okay.
All right, you may be seated. Go ahead.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Spiro.
Good afternoon. You had seen when you were testifying earlier Mr. Baldwin in court today, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the first time that you've seen him since, I believe, since the day that the incident occurred?
Correct.
And of course, you see him here as a defendant in a courtroom wearing a suit jacket. He wasn't dressed like that on the scene, right?
Right.
He was Harlan Rust, and he had his actor costume on, right?
Yes.
And you actually took those clothes and tested them for blood, like you said before, right?
I did.
And he was shaking as you did that, was he not?
He seemed upset as I did that.
And of course, you remember that, right?
Yes.
And the lapel that you've reviewed has refreshed your memory.
Correct.
And you know that he received a phone call from his friend Joel the director who had been shot, and you used that information to then send officers to the hospital to retrieve the bullet, correct?
I believe we already had deputies at the hospital at that time.
But he told you that and told you that that would be something that he wanted you to do, right?
He indicated it was something he wanted law enforcement to do, but we were already making the necessary, we were already sending a deputy to the hospital to retrieve that.
And he told you that he pulled the gun out, he turned, and he just cocked the gun, right?
He did state that, yes.
He didn't say he pulled the trigger, right?
I don't recall him saying that.
And you never tested the hammer of that gun for DNA, did you?
I do not know the FBI lab's process for processing a firearm for DNA.
But because he told you that, and I'm putting up A10, defense exhibit, that's why you knew that the document that had fallen near Miss Hutchins that says macro on hammer as thumb cocks it was so important. Isn't that right?
There was a paper inside of the church that indicated a firearm was being used, so I photographed it. We had paperwork that was later collected out of Miss Hutchins's side bag that was also additional script. And that was collected because it was part of her bag, part of her personal property.
And you see the name Halyna on top, right?
Yes, this is what was taken out of her bag.
And what was at the floor, A3, Russ Colt cocked quietly now. Did I read that right?
Yes.
And you and your fellow officers discussed this and said, this is important. It confirms what he told us, didn't you?
I believe that I stated it was important because it was a script that involved a firearm inside the church where a shooting had occurred.
And after this point in time, eventually, you all sent that firearm off, not to have the firearm tested, its hammer for DNA, but rather for it to end up being destroyed in the testing, or broken in the testing, if you prefer.
The firearm was sent for DNA, and additional testing was not conducted until later.
We were talking also, to move away from the firearm for a second, about how the lethal round got on set, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Baldwin, you actually told him that you would figure it out. You gave him that assurance. You said, I get it. I know that there was a live round, wasn't supposed to be on set. We law enforcement are going to find that out, didn't you?
I believe the words that I used was, that's why we're here. We're here to try and figure out what happened.
And one of your fellow officers sort of came over the top of you and sort of confirmed to him, don't worry, we're going to find out.
Objection to whatever a fellow officer.
Effect on listener? What? One word, but objection, yes, what is it?
Objection, hearsay, the officer isn't here, who he's speaking of.
Respond?
It's not for the truth of the matter asserted, but that it was her.
Okay. Well, did you lay the foundation for that? Did you ask her what she did because of that?
Not yet, but I can.
Okay.
And after you...
If he lays that foundation for effect on listener?
After what you said and what you heard from your fellow officer, it is true, as you've testified previously, that you did go out to seek the source of that lethal round, right?
Please rephrase your question as to the word seek.
Sure. After you said what you said and the officer said what he said, is it not the case that you made it a priority to try to find the source of the lethal ammunition, correct?
Our priority was to find the facts of what had happened in this situation.
And one of the steps that you took that we talked about, by searching the truck, by going to Seth Kenny, by getting a PDQ, one of the things you then did was you did seek out and try to find the source of the lethal ammunition, correct?
Yes.
And as you were doing that, you continued to work with Corporal Hancock, right?
Yes.
You would see her and the prosecutors often, right?
I would see Corporal Hancock more often.
And you testified previously about the search for the lethal ammunition at the trial of the armorer, correct?
Yes.
And a question came up at that trial of this issue of, did Seth Kenney really provide the ammunition to Seth or not, right?
Yes, I believe that came up.
Okay. And eventually there was a verdict in that case, right?
Yes.
And a good Samaritan walked into the police station and gave you the lethal ammunition, didn't they?
After the Hannah Gutierrez trial, there was an individual that came to the police station and stated they had ammunition.
And they turned in the ammunition,
Yes.
and they gave it to you, right?
Yes.
And they told you that this was the ammunition that ended up with Seth Kenney that killed Miss Hutchins, right?
I do not recall all of their statements.
Who did you tell about that?
During that conversation, my Lieutenant Brian Brandel, was with me, and Detective Hancock was aware of that individual, that he had come to the sheriff's office.
And you never vouchered that and turned it over to the defense, did you?
It was a doc information situation.
I don't know what that means. Can you just explain it to me?
Meaning that I was instructed by my lieutenant to create a doc info report on it.
And I mean, what does that mean?
It means we're documenting information that this individual came and gave this ammunition to us.
Okay, but you didn't, I mean, he told you it had to do with the Rush shooting, correct?
Yes.
And he told you actually that he was a police officer in a neighboring county, right?
I believe he said he was a retired police officer, yes.
And he told you you all had been duped by Seth Kenney, didn't he?
No,
In words and substance, didn't he?
I don't recall that, no.
Okay. And he said to you, I'm willing to fill out a witness statement, right?
No, I don't recall that.
He told you that the rounds came from a green ammo can, didn't he?
Judge, I have to object to hearsay.
Sustained.
Did you take the rounds that were provided to you? By the way, they were Starline brass nickel primer live, weren't they?
I don't recall.
You don't recall? Really?
That is what I said.
Well, it's information acted upon is going to be my response. But he told you the reason that he was coming in is because he didn't trust law enforcement on this case.
Well, you know what? She's going to object to hearsay, and you're going to say effect on listener.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have to lay your foundation better. You are.
So, let me ask this question. How come law enforcement didn't voucher this with the rest of the evidence in the Rusk case?
I'm not sure what you mean by the word voucher.
How come you didn't inventory it and put it with all the rest of the evidence in the Rusk case?
I was instructed to put this in as a doc information case, which I did, and it is under that case number.
You buried it.
No.
Your lieutenant?
There is a supplemental report on it, and that was placed into evidence.
Did you ever turn that over to the defense?
I have not turned over anything to the defense. My information goes through the sheriff's office.
Are you aware of whether the sheriff's office ever informed the defense that a good Samaritan came in and turned in this ammunition?
I do not know.
When the defense came to view the Starline brass nickel primer live ammunition with you. You didn't show them this, did you?
I did not have an evidence viewing with the defense. That was my coworker.
Your coworker didn't show this to the defense, correct?
I do not know.
Do you have any reason to believe your coworker showed this to the defense, given that it wasn't put in the same inventory as the rust case?
No.
Did you or anyone from the sheriff's office ever tell the armorer or her lawyers that a Good Samaritan came in after the verdict and gave you this information?
I do not know.
But you do agree he did tell you that Seth said this was the evidence from the shooting, correct?
I don't recall what he stated, what someone else stated.
And you told him he didn't have to write a witness statement. Law enforcement was going to type up a report on it today, right?
I never stated any such thing about a witness statement.
He offered to provide a written witness statement so that it was clear. Did he not?
I do not recall that happening.
Okay. Did you give him assurances that you would type up a report on it?
I don't recall providing assurances to him.
Did you tell him that you would write up a report on it?
I don't recall doing that either.
Do you deny it?
No.
So when you testified earlier that you never found the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins, that wasn't true either, was it?
Can you rephrase the way you stated that?
Sure. As you sit here today, having had a Good Samaritan turn in these 45 rounds into the precinct, right?
If that's what you're discussing,
Yeah. You don't know whether or not you have in your possession the live rounds that killed Miss Hutchins, do you?
the live round that killed Miss Hutchins has been fired. Are you asking me about a connection between those live rounds and other ones?
I'm asking you, as we've talked about at great length, whether or not you withdraw it. I'm asking you, isn't it the case that law enforcement likely has the matching rounds to the ammunition that killed Miss Hutchins?
I do not know.
And you do not know because you made a doc report about this and did not put it with the rest of the rust evidence, correct?
Those rounds were not placed with the rest of the rust evidence, correct?
Nor were they sent to the FBI for testing with the rust evidence, were they?
No, they were not.
I have no further questions for this witness at this time.
Redirect.
Ms. Poplar, are you a detective?
No, I am not.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in this case?
No, I did not.
You didn't interview Mr. Baldwin?
No.
You didn't interview Ms. Gutierrez?
No.
Mr. Spiro was asking you about the Good Samaritan who arrived at the Sheriff's Department after the Gutierrez trial. Can you tell the members of the jury when the Gutierrez trial was?
I don't recall exactly. I believe it was back in April.
Would you take end of February, beginning of March?
Yes, that sounds more accurate.
Okay. Do you recall the Good Samaritan's name?
I do not.
Would you recognize it if I said it to you?
Yes.
Troy Teskey.
Yes, that was his name.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey is a close friend of Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father?
No, I did not know that.
Are you aware that Troy Teskey had his own motivations for wanting to place blame on Seth Kinney to help Hannah Gutierrez?
Objection, leading. Objection, irrelevant.
Overruled, overruled.
Please answer.
No, I had no knowledge of that.
Now, to be clear, is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for bringing live rounds on the movie set?
No.
Is Mr. Baldwin charged with involuntary manslaughter for loading a live round into the gun?
No.
Has a person already been tried and convicted for those things?
Yes.
To try to clarify some points, Starline Brass, is that a brand of ammunition?
Yes, it is.
Is it a brand of ammunition or a casing?
It is a casing.
Okay. And the live rounds from the set of Rust had nickel primers, right?
Yes.
Objection, leading every question.
Overruled.
So, let me ask you this. When you went to PDQ to conduct your search, because you're not the detective, do you remember whether he had any surveillance video or not?
I don't remember.
So, with regard to Mr. Kinney, prior to the search of PDQ, did Mr. Kinney actually bring his own live ammunition to the police station?
Yes.
So before you ever executed a search warrant, he went to the police station and said, I want to give you a sample of my live ammunition.
Yes.
And you took that and you sent it to the FBI, right?
Correct.
Now, with regard to ammunition, characteristics of some of this ammunition is it says Starline Brass on the top, right? And when I say it says Starline Brass, describe to the jurors what the emblem is that we see.
It is a star, an arching line, and then another star.
The live ammunition that was taken from PDQ, was it all Starline Brass?
No.
Was it all nickel primers?
No.
Now, in addition to the stamp on the top of the casing and the color of the primer, does ammunition have different shaped projectiles?
Yes.
And when we're talking about the projectile, we're talking about, what are we talking about?
We're talking about the nose of the bullet, so what actually gets projected out the barrel of the gun.
Elmo, please. Thank you, sir. I'm showing you what's been previously admitted at State's Exhibit 26. Remind us, which are the live rounds? The suspected live rounds, sorry, we'll get there.
The ones to the right,
And what are the ones on the left?
they are dummy rounds.
is there a different shape to the tip of the projectile?
Yes.
Tell us what the difference is.
So the live rounds.
You can mark your screen if you want.
Okay. So the live rounds have a flattened surface to them, whereas our dummy rounds come to a further point. Sorry, I was trying to draw a line. Almost like a curvature to a better point.
At my request, prior to the Gutierrez trial, did you take out a ruler and measure those?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall the size of what we call the meplet, which is that very top of the projectile? Do you recall the size of the live rounds?
Yes, the live rounds were 6 millimeters and the dummy rounds were 4 millimeters.
Every single live round, well, suspected live round, taken from the set of rust, was it a 6 millimeter meplet?
Yes.
All of the live ammunition that was taken from PDQ, to include the live ammunition that Seth Kinney brought into the sheriff's station, did any of those have 6 millimeter meplets?
No.
Do you have any evidence that Seth Kinney is the source of the live rounds on rust?
No.
If you know, is there evidence that Hannah Gutierrez brought the live rounds onto the set of rust?
Yes.
What is that evidence? Let's talk about it.
The evidence that I am aware of is a photograph on a cell phone of the rounds in the background of a photograph that was taken with a cell phone. Those rounds are the same ones from the same box that were being pulled from that day, that were handed to Lieutenant Benavides.
Let me see if I can find an exhibit to help us. State's Exhibit 12. Go ahead, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and clear your screen, the marks. Is this the box you're referring to right here?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that Hannah Gutierrez admitted to bringing that box on the set?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that Hannah Gutierrez actually provided evidence to the sheriff's department that she was provided that box by her father?
Yes.
And the Good Samaritan who came in with the live rounds and was telling you Seth Kinney's the bad guy, that happened how long after the incident?
That happened well after the incident in after February, so March of this year.
So Ms. Hutchins died in what year?
In October of 2021.
And Mr. Teskey, Hannah Gutierrez's father's good friend, the Good Samaritan, he decided to bring this ammunition in after her conviction?
Objection.
Is that right?
Objection. Assumes facts, not evidence. Misleading.
Overruled, unless you want to come up and tell me.
Yes, I do.
All right, come on up.
Recorder, would you read back the last question, please?
And Mr. Teskey, Halyna Gutierrez's father's good friend, the Good Samaritan, he decided to bring this ammunition in after her conviction. Is that right?
Go ahead and answer.
Yes.
In your experience, if Seth Kinney wanted to hide the fact that he had live ammunition at PDQ, he had plenty of time to get rid of it, right?
Yes.
And you found some there, right?
Yes.
And the photograph, well, was all of the live ammunition in the same place?
Yes.
Where was it found?
It was in a box on the bottom of a stack labeled as live ammo.
And for completeness, was there live ammunition found in another room away from this box?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Did you find any ammunition that was not .45 caliber anywhere else at PDQ?
I believe there were 2 boxes of marked 38 caliber ammunition that were in another room.
Did Mr. Kinney tell you that his personal firearm's a .38?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been previously admitted as defendants A23. Is this, so when we're talking about .45 caliber ammunition, well, let's back up. Is that the only caliber of live ammunition or suspected live ammunition found on the set of Rust?
Yes.
21, you said?
23, A23. So if you find 38 live ammunition, is that important to you?
No.
Because 38 is not .45, right?
Correct.
So the .45 caliber ammunition that you found at PDQ, is this where you found it?
Yes.
Any mistaking that that would be live ammunition?
No.
Why?
It was clearly marked as live ammunition in that box.
And let me ask you, Ms. Popple, the ammunition that the Good Samaritan, Mr. Teskey, the close friend of Halyna Gutierrez's dad, when that ammunition that he brought to you after her conviction, you still have it?
Yes.
You can bring it in here and you can show it to the jury, right?
Yes.
And they can see for themselves that it does not match the live ammunition from the set of Rust, correct?
Yes.
And that is obvious just when you look at it, is it not?
Yes.
Do you know how many boxes of dummy ammunition were provided to the set of Rust by Seth Kinney?
If I recall correctly, just 1.
Do you know how many boxes of dummy ammunition were provided to the set by Halyna Gutierrez?
No, I do not.
Okay, fair enough. Now, you were asked some questions on cross-examination, and I think they were related to, let me get the exhibit just so that we know what we're talking about. You were asked some questions about the gun belt. You remember those questions on cross?
Yes.
And I think the actor was Jensen Ackles.
Correct.
Do you know whether or not Jensen Ackles checked his firearm on the set of the movie?
No, I do not.
Whether he did his own safety checks?
I do not know.
Let's talk briefly about, let me make sure I have the proper exhibit numbers for the record. I want to be clear, if you recall, I'm showing you defendants A27. Where did those dummy rounds come from?
These were the dummy rounds removed from the box with blue writing that stated dummy rounds.
And who do you know supplied those rounds?
Seth Kenny.
And I think I made a mistake on direct examination. This is State's Exhibit 30. Is that what I showed you?
Yes, I believe so.
And so those actually didn't come out of that box, did they?
Correct.
Do you know where they came from?
They came from a gun belt that was located inside of the prop truck.
Defendants A26. Is that where they came from?
Yes.
Based on the dummy rounds in both of these pictures, from the box and from the gun belt, do they have distinctive characteristics?
Yes.
Have they been identified? Who do you know who supplied all of the dummy rounds that were in the gun belt and in the box?
Yes, that was Seth Kenny.
All right. You were asked some questions about some documents that you photographed. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
I'm trying to find them. Are counsel, are all of the exhibits still up here? Take that as a yes.
No, I have these, I have the script and shells.
Those are the exhibits? Does it say copy? Okay, can I use them then?
Yes,
Okay, as long as they're the same.
that is it.
Okay, we'll just use your copies. This is Defendant's Exhibit A10. You remember being shown this?
Yes.
Do you have any idea when this exhibit, or I'm sorry, when scene 125 was being filmed?
No, I do not.
Same question for scene, is it 55 or 66? I apologize.
No.
68,
No.
115,
No.
118,
No.
121,
No.
130.
No.
In fact, if you know, was Ms. Hutchins killed during the filming of an actual scene?
No, she was not.
She was not. Is that right?
Correct.
Same thing here for 118 again. Ms. Hutchins wasn't killed during the filming of a scene, was she?
No, she was not.
Do you know, if you do you know who wrote the script?
No, I do not.
Do you know who the director of the movie was?
I believe that was Joel Sousa.
Do you know whether or not he's going to come in and testify?
No, I do not.
Did he testify in the Gutierrez trial?
I believe he did, yes.
Did you interview the person who wrote the script?
No.
Did you interview any of the witnesses in the room at the time of the shooting?
No, I did not.
So you haven't talked to a single person who could tell you whether these defense A3 and A10 are relevant at all. Is that right?
Correct.
You were asked by Mr. Spyro whether or not it was true that live ammunition should never be on a movie set, and you said that was correct. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You've never worked on a movie set before, have you?
No, I've not.
How do you know that?
Makes sense to me. Makes common sense.
But do you know?
No, I do not know the rules of movie sets.
You're not aware that there are safety bulletins for the use of live ammunition on movie sets?
No, I did not know that.
All total, including prop truck, the entire scene out there at Bonanza Creek, how many real firearms were taken into evidence?
If I can look at my report.
Sure.
I believe 13 in total.
13 real firearms.
Yes.
Now, you were asked some questions about Mr. Kinney being present at the search of the prop truck. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you remember why he was present?
I don't recall the details of why he was present.
Do you recall how the sheriff's department got access to the safe?
Yes, Seth Kenny provided us with the combination.
And the firearms that you recovered, real and fake, who did they belong to?
It was my understanding they belonged to Seth Kenny.
Would you say that those firearms were many thousands of dollars in value?
Yes.
And do you know who provided the vast majority of the blank ammunition?
That I do not know.
Okay. Does it surprise you that the person who owns the guns had access to the safe?
No.
Have you ever discovered any evidence that Seth Kinney was ever physically present on the set of Rust other than the day that he helped unlock the safe for your search?
No.
Do you recall you were asked some questions about you had information about a green ammo can, and that was one of the reasons that you executed the search warrant. You recall those questions?
Yes.
Do you remember where you got the information about the green ammo can?
I do not.
Did you review any of the photographs from any of the cell phone extractions that were done in this case?
No.
Did you look at any of the text messages between the different witnesses in this case?
No.
Do you have any information that Hannah Gutierrez previously asked if she could have live ammunition on the movie set she was working on with Nicolas Cage?
I do not have that information.
Okay. Now, I understand we've got some photographs of PDQ, and it looked like it was really packed full of stuff. Is that right?
Yes.
Now, you called it a warehouse. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about how big that facility is?
It's a very small facility. It has an upfront office, a hallway that leads to a bathroom, and one small workshop room, and then a room towards the back.
Is it possible for you to estimate the square footage?
No, I wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay. It's a small building.
Yes.
Now, as a crime scene technician, are you trained to find pieces of evidence in difficult areas?
Yes.
Have you ever been in a person's home or apartment that kind of looked like a hoarder place?
Yes.
How many times do you think that's happened to you?
Several dozen.
Several dozen.
At least, yes.
And you're trained to look for evidence in that kind of an environment?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that Mr. Kinney's business is a prop house?
Yes.
Would you expect a prop house to be full of props?
Yes.
Was the prop house indeed full of movie props?
Yes.
Did anyone live there?
I don't believe so, no.
Do you have any idea, based on the investigation that you did, whether or not Mr. Baldwin cocked the gun when he wasn't supposed to?
I do not have any information based on what I conducted. No.
Because you didn't interview any of those witnesses, right?
Correct.
You were asked some questions, or at least one or two questions, about your pretrial interview with the defense attorneys. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Was Mr. Spiro even present at your pretrial interview?
I don't believe so, no.
I'm almost done. Let me just review my notes.
I have two notes, questions from the jury.
Okay. If you know the investigation into the source of the live rounds, did that investigation continue after the case was turned over to the district attorney's office?
I do not know.
As a crime scene technician, in your experience, do revolvers go off by themselves?
Objection.
Yeah,
701, 702.
Withdrawn.
yeah. All right, thank you. That was sustained.
I want to just back up real quick. You were asked a question on cross-examination about specifically information that you had prior to putting in the request for the accidental discharge testing. You recall that question?
Yes.
And I think you testified that you didn't recall what information you received. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you were provided a document to refresh your memory. Do you recall that?
Yes.
May I approach?
Are you finished with that prop?
Yeah.
That demonstrative evidence?
Thank you, Judge. No problem. Thank you.
Ms. Popple, have you had an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
How many pages is it?
It is 3 pages.
Does that document say anything about accidental discharge testing?
Objection.
That is that is not, that's a refresh of memory, so it doesn't have to.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to sustain his objection.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask this question, and maybe let's see how it goes. Does it say anything about the gun being destroyed?
No. I'm sorry. No.
Did that document refresh your memory as to what you understood from the FBI about what the condition of the gun would be after the testing?
Yes.
It does.
Does refresh my memory. Yes. I'm sorry. Can you restate that?
Does that document, the question you were asked on cross-examination was about the information that...
Counsel,
Okay.
I'm sorry to break you up, but let me give you these.
Ms. Popple, was a fanny pack collected from the set of Rust?
Yes.
Do you know who the fanny pack belonged to?
Yes.
Who's that?
That was Hannah Gutierrez.
And was any of the live ammunition found in the fanny pack?
No.
So after Ms. Hutchins was shot, do you know whether or not the gun was unloaded by anyone on the set?
The information that was relayed to me was that the firearm was emptied by Hannah onto the cart.
Does that include the spent casing?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness.
I just have one question. The Good Samaritan asked you, in reference to the ammunition he provided, question, and that's the one that killed Halyna. And you said yes, correct?
I don't recall that.
Do you deny it?
I don't deny it.
No further questions.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take our afternoon bathroom break. Please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court, and let's try to get back in around 3:20. Okay, thank you.
Please your pads and your chairs. All rise for the jury.
We're going to go on the bench conference, but we're in recess for all intents and purposes for bathroom break for the rest of you.